things in the town today. It's a nice day, the sun's out, it's bright. Across the street is Mrs. Kidd Plummer, K-I-D-D, Plummer's home. And when she bought her car, which I think was I don't know whether it was a Marmon or a Stutz or what, but she bought a chauffeur with it who came from England. His name was Landry. And Al bought the home and added to it. The original house you can see by the roof and things. Right there where the parking lot is was the old Justice Barnes's home. And he was the Chief Justice. And he was also something that served in the state of Maine courts. I don't know what.
That was torn down 20 years ago?
Oh, yes.
Roughly?
Yes.
Maybe 30?
Yes, maybe 30. Yeah. Most of the things that I talk about will be 60 or 70 years old or older. And this is the old Donworth home. It was given to the town by Mrs. Sim White. It's used for the museum and the Chamber of Commerce. At the present. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
We're talking about 110 Main, present. That's Dr. Mitchell's home. Now Al Copperthwaite, which owns the home next door, is established the business out of it, and is Dr. Mitchell's. Okay, that is the old Fogg home, Donnie Fogg. He was the first publisher of the Pioneer Times, or the second publisher of the Pioneer Times. And the Pioneer Times used to be two papers, the Rustic Pioneer Times, the Rustic paper, Times, and the Pioneer Times. And then he bought out both, and then they operated Field News One.
Okay, that's 115 Main. Now, let's do the next one while we're right here, 117 Main.
Okay.
Go for it.
That's the Bob Lawless home. He was a judge here in town, and his son's a lawyer someplace now in the state of Maine, I think, Bob, young Bob. And that's the Lawless home, has always been the Lawless home.
Beautiful old tin ceilings in that house.
Yes. Those tin ceilings are worth a lot of money. Really. This is the Episcopal Church, the oldest church building in the town of Houlton. And the narthex, or the front of the church, has been changed. The entrance used to be where that big cedar is now, and there was an outlet over here too. You went in around the circle walk. But that belfry is the same that's always been. Just this front, they changed a little bit. Captain Flagg, who was at the air base in 1840, at the Garrison in 1848, gave at that time, in 1848, he gave $25,000 to build this church. And that's the same as $500 million today. But that was how the church was originally built. This is 122 Main Street. Justin Rose's home, ROSE. He ran the quarry out at Nickerson Lake. Okay. He ran the quarry at Nickerson Lake, and also had a quarry right down where the library is now, or works.
Marble Works, Houlton Marble Works.
Marble Works, it did. And that was owned by Watts, W-A-T-T-S. But this is also part, somehow or other, this is part of the carpenters for Putman Carpenter. For Putman. That is the home of Lombard, L-U-M-B-A-R-D. He was a very wealthy timber owner. And that's a nice home, awfully nice home. They just recently painted it gray from the original red. And in the garage of that house was one of the first Pierce arrows that I ever saw. And Alan Clark bought it. Okay, this home here we're facing is the old Sim White home. It's called California style. And Dr. Carr's home is about the same style as that. You notice up over the top of the windows.
Dr. Carr's home at 67 High Street.
Yes. That's owned by Bob Glidden now. That's the old Dr. Donovan home, and the doctor at the hospital now has it, and is redoing it all and changing it all over.
123 Main Street.
This is the rec center. This was an open field. Used to play football here, and this went up high, and the rest of it went down back. And the gentleman that lived out back there was Robert Arndt. He lives in that home way over there. And his father was something to do with the Houlton savings with the Farmers National Bank and the customs, I don't know what. But we used to play football here all the time. That was long before they built the building there.
How about the old Knights of Columbus Hall? What do you know about that one?
That's Dr. Mann's home.
M-A-N-N?
M-A-N-N. He brought me into this world, Brian. Where do you want me to get? Anywheres?
Oh, wherever you want to go.
Okay. This is Dr. Mann's home. And he was a physician in town. That was, as far as I know, was the Ralph Elberry house. That portico chunk, or whatever you call it, it's over the roof part. That's always been on there. And it used to be a place where you could drive cars in and get out underneath it.
130 Main Street, currently the home of Dr. Pat Coble.
Oh, yeah. This home originally was owned by Dr. Orchid, and then Dr. Whitney lived there a while, I think. And then J.R. Harvey lived there for a time. Wilford Dow, who bought out J.R. Harvey Insurance Company, lived there for a while. And now it is owned by a doctor.
Ted Houston and...
Ted Houston and his wife.
Mariah, Dr. Mariah.
Mariah, Dr. Mariah. And this is the old Powers home. At one time, Donald McCready, son, found a package of diamonds in there. And there were, maybe 8 or 10 nice diamonds. And gave them to the sheriff's department, and whatever became of them, nobody knows. That was Howard, who was an attorney. Okay, this is the old Powers home. Now the Oddfellows have it. And in this side, bowling alley is up there. And then I believe on the second floor, they've taken and torn out all the petitions and put a dance hall or whatever.
Meeting hall.
That's the old Bob Williams home. It has hundreds. Most all the things I'm talking about would be at least 60 years old. And which I can remember. Now, that place there is the Bob Williams home. And what number did you say that was?
129 Main. Corner of Main and Willard Street.
And
William Street, excuse me, William Street.
Williams Street. And she lives in there by herself, Mrs. Williams, I believe. I don't know a great deal about the house. He was a clerk of courts in the courthouse.
Now this land behind us here, where
Cary.
the Pentecostal Church and the Doyle House are, and the Church of Christ, there was a Cary House here at one time.
That originally was, the frame is what is original, not the roof part, but the frame part is original. This part here.
That's part of one of the Cary homes?
Yes. And I don't know, I can't tell you what Cary that was. but that was part of the Cary's home.
Now they tore another house down just up the street here a little farther. This is 138 Main.
Yeah.
And where the Doyle house or Wilbert Bossy's house is now, was there another house there or just the barn from the Cary house?
I don't believe there was another home there. The next home burned. I can tell you about that.
The next home farther up, the Madigan home on the corner?
No, Cary home right here.
Oh, there was another Cary home in between?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That was Shep Cary that became the governor of the state of Maine. It's the only time we've ever had a governor.
I thought Powers was a governor. Cary was in Congress.
Gary's in Congress, excuse me, yeah.
The only man from Houlton who ever made it to Washington as a congressman.
Gee whiz, you want some nice tires?
Okay, so this was where Shep Cary in later years lived down here. In earlier years, he lived up on Drake's Hill, right?
Yes.
But then in later years, he lived down
Over here.
roughly where we're standing now.
That was a vacant lot as far as I know.
Okay, so this was the lot that the Cary home stood on.
Yeah, and this is...
Currently the Church of Christ.
Yeah, this originally, there was nothing here at all. The original Cary home was here. It burned. And, excuse me, take it off. Lane House, Paul Lane, who was the Houlton Potato Company, he and his, no, this was Walter. His brother was Paul. They were from the Boston area. Came here and started the potato business and the Houlton Potato Company. This is owned by Hutchison now.
Steve Hutchinson now, 133 Main Street.
And he runs the Army-Navy store, the Houlton
Town and Country now.
County, what did they call it now?
They changed it to Town and Country.
Town
Used to be
and
Army-Navy.
Army-Navy, it was Town Country.
Now, moving up Main Street to the Madigan House on the corner of Main and Burley.
148, isn't it?
Oh, let me see, John. This is 142.
142, yeah. This is the Madigan House. And it's interesting, the roof on this was the third story. It burned off. And they just redid the roof and kept the house the same as it is. And Mildred lives there by herself now. They had a real nice...
Marie.
Marie Madigan.
Right.
She is his second wife. Marie is.
And that was Albert Madigan?
Albert Madigan's mother, stepmother. Albert Madigan, John Madigan, Leigh Madigan, all the Madigans. She was a stepmother.
Okay.
She was a girl from Presque Isle. Her name was Dubé. Her name was Dubé.
Now, across the street, let me see now, where are we?
It's Pierce House, and all the Pierce family has lived here. And you can go in that house and see the grades, different grades of it. The first floor is when Mr. Pierce first had the home. And then the second floor, you will find over the doors, the keystone is the same as down in the fog block downtown, which he owned, Mr. Pierce owned. And the third floor in this is the sleeping quarters of the people who work there. And it's entirely, the first floor, the second floor, and the third floor are entirely different in the types of the houses that they are.
Now, wasn't that real common in many of these older homes in Houlton, that the third floor was the servants' quarters?
The servants' quarters. And that has a very, very, very small kitchen in it. Has a very, very fancy pantry. Pantry is those two windows there. And I believe. Then those going up in steps are the steps that go upstairs, where you see the big difference in the upstairs. This is where the second story burned off in this home. Dr. Madigan was his son.
John B. Madigan.
John B., yes. This was the old Madigan home. And of course, I'd swing my camera around. Oh, you
We
can't
can
see
do
it.
that.
And
Well,
that's the Madigan Hospital.
right, and we'll step over across where we can get a better picture, and we'll talk about the Madigan Hospital.
That was James Courtney Madigan.
James C. Madigan from
James C.
Noblesboro,
Madigan,
Maine.
Yeah. And then there's a James C. Madigan over in Highland Avenue.
Who is James C. the Fourth.
Yes.
Let's step over to where we can see the old Madigan home.
This park was created by the town, and Mr. Pierce gave the land, James Leonard Pierce. I think.
James M. Pierce.
James M. Pierce. And gave the land to the town. And at one time, at that spot there, Leo Ireland, who was a custodian at the post office, father lived. And Leo Ireland was born and brought up here. And he used to take care of the Madigan home and also the Madigan home and the Pierce home. And then there were two other homes in here. I can't remember exactly what the names were now, but I can't remember what the names were. But that's, in the background is the Madigan Hospital, which was part of the Madigan family, and the home, big home. But this is the Boy in the Boot, which, there's only 48 of them?
Oh, you hear different numbers, but I think it's closer to a couple dozen.
A couple of dozen of them throughout the world. And, I think this is also one of the few ones is to see a man and dog. Yeah, for a dog. Find two of those on here. A dog.
And a great place for kids to dip their hands on a hot day.
And there used to be a lot of money in there one time. People used to throw money in, you know. But I think this has made a nice park.
This is the intersection of Main and Military.
Yeah.
Nicely kept by the Garden Club.
Yes.
Plaque over here
Yeah, I
to
think that-
Lona Taggett Putnam.
I think the Garden Club, Kay Bell and John Madigan's wife,
Mildred Madigan.
Mildred, do an awfully nice job.
They do a beautiful job.
They do an awful lot of work.
Here, downtown, churches, post office,
Everywhere.
all
Every
over.
place you see flowers, they do it.
Let's go over and talk about the Madigan House.
This is the original Madigan home. And the white part, all the white building of it, is the Madigan home. And this is given over to the hospital. Then many a child has been born in this hospital. And at one time it was believed that all the children were born here and all the sick people, or people other than the birth of mothers, were down at the Rustic Hospital. And so there were two fractions.
Well, this also was the Catholic hospital,
The Catholic
and the
hospital.
Aroostook Hospital down on School Street was the Protestant
yeah.
hospital.
And some people believed in that and kept that for a long, long while until they rebuilt the present one that they have now, which is so good that they built that. Boy, I think that's one of the most photographed things in town, that park.
Mm-hmm.
Gee. Pierce home, if you notice, on the top of the barn, the little design there is the same as on the duplicate or the Burley home over in Tom Piper.
Over to 60 Pleasant Street.
That's the Colonel Hume home, and she married Helen Clark, who lived in the back part of the home. And it's since been sold. I don't know.
That would be 84 Military Street.
Oh, 84.
Yeah.
84 Military Street. That was originally in that dooryard, in that driveway, at one time when I was a kid. I saw a Stutzmobile in there, an Auburn car. I saw 3 old cars. That was owned by George B. Dunn. who was a lumberman, who owned timberlands all done up north, all through. Then the Shaws moved in there. Then Forrest Barnes lived there for a while. Then John Alexander lived there for a while. And there's been everybody, and it's awfully small rooms, but it is a nice home. And the Carys moved over there when their home burned over in Main Street. They moved over there and lived.
And that had one of the biggest oak trees in the front lawn, I remember, and I see the oak tree's gone now, and there's just the stump over there. But that was a huge, towering oak tree.
That home, the next, is still on?
Let's walk down the street a little bit where we can get it. Looking back at the Colonel Frank Hume house. And the Dunn house. And the next house, we'll step ahead a little more.
George Sheehan's home.
82 Military Street.
And I'm not sure who owned that prior to him. But now, who owns that now?
Brian Ford.
Brian Ford. And Brian has done an awful lot. He's an awful good man for the town. And his wife's a school teacher, and he's a school teacher. And they do a lot of work for the young people.
Now in front of 78 Military Street. John?
Okay. That home belongs to Glenn Hines and his wife. And he is the gentleman who did the sculpture of Samantha Smith, who died in an airplane accident in Lewiston, Maine. And now the display of the monument is in Augusta.
Right on the side of the State Museum, on the outside. Yeah, it's on a little piece of lawn right between the parking lot and the State Museum. And
Glenn has been quite a designer and worker of different things.
Glenn went to Ricker, and C. Arthur Smith, Samantha's father, who died with her in the plane crash, also was an English teacher at Ricker in the late 60s, and we're just off the corner of the old Ricker campus. John, you want to talk about this old house right here? This is 72 and 74 Military Street. Tell us all about it.
I say that is the original high school of 18, and there's a sign over there. I think it ceased to become the high school about 1889.
The original Houlton Academy. Goes back into what, the 40s, 1840s?
Oh no, yeah, no, well it was ceased to be Houlton Free Academy in 1889, and it's set over on the Ricker College, where Ricker College was, Warding Hall, before Warding Hall burned, before it burned. And all I know, it was a classroom, and you can find pictures of around town of that building and students standing in front of it.
And it used to sit up on High Street. Now it's right at the intersection of High and Military.
What number is it?
That is 72 on the door on the left and 74 on the door on the right, until we renumber under 911. Next week it'll be something different.
And now in the location of where that building was originally.
It was over on this side of the street, back up on the hill where the old Warding Hall was built and then burned, and then the new Warding Hall was converted into senior citizen housing. Now let's talk about the old Presbyterian church, in later years the Christian Science reading room.
That was the Presbyterian church originally, and then it became the Christian Science church.
Look at me, John. Look right at the microphone. We can hear you. There we go.
It's a nice church, and I guess the gentleman that has done it, I'd like to go in it sometime, has done an awful lot of work on the inside of it. And I'm very happy that the windows have all been covered and saved, because there's some nice...
Beautiful old stained glass windows all around the church.
And the house next door to that church was the First Congregational Church home. The Kirschbaum, Reverend Kirschbaum lived there. And the next house, too, was kind of important. He was the head of the CPR Railroad. I think his name was Dow. Not the Dow over in Green Street, but a Dow up on the CPR. The home that was there, where the parking lot is now, was the original Moody's. And Moody had an ice cream store down next to the theater. Then the next home was a duplex. And then there was another home in there that was torn down that was a duplex.
Okay, this is 68. The one that was torn down was 66. Then 64.
And then that was Dr. Jackson's house. There. The next one was Paul Lane's home.
I remember that as being the Paul Lane home. Walter Lane's brother.
Walter Lane's brother. Then the next home was a beautiful home, and there was a beautiful piano in that house. Belonged to the Monroes. And he ran the West End drugstore. And that was a beautiful home. Their home originally was a beautiful home. It was a private home. And the daughter, Jean, lived in the house next door for years. This house, there was some nice furnishings sold out of those houses, out of this house, when Ricker College was abandoned and going down.
Yeah, it became the old Ricker Library, they called it, and then Ricker built the new library, used it for, had a few classrooms in there and whatnot.
But there were some beautiful lights and things in this house, but they've since gone, by the way.
That's 71 Military Street. Shot here of
that's a nice home.
Philip Manser, brownstone mansion, with the carriage house built of the same material out back.
It's a nice home, too. That's the Kidder home. Sugar, I can't think of his first name. He had twin sons.
67 Military Street.
Edward and something. Yeah, and he
corner of Military and Calvert.
He was something to do with the courthouse, which most of the Houlton people around Houlton were connected with the courthouse some way or another. Lawyers or whatever.
And across the street, John.
That's Madam Briggs's home. And her husband also was an attorney. There were some beautiful things in that home when it was sold. Madam Briggs was a teacher in school for years and years and years and years. She taught French. You could not enter her room had you gone outside and smoked a cigarette, because she'd tell you you'd smoked a cigarette. and you couldn't go in her room chewing gum. You had to raise your hand to answer anything, and always you had to speak French in all her classes. And she was a lovely, lovely lady. That great big White House that you see in the background.
Which one? The old soup kitchen or the next one?
No, the next one.
The next one, 7 Kelleran Street.
Yes. The next one is the old Palmer bottling works, where they used to bottle ginger ale and pop. And that was one of the original bottling works. Once in a while you'll find a bottle now that has Palmer's on it.
How old is the old Unitarian Church?
I don't know.
They call it the first church. Beautiful old church with the fieldstone foundation.
But it isn't by any means the oldest church in town. The oldest church in town, of course, is the Episcopal Church. And
the oldest church building, right?
The oldest church building. And the Unitarian Church, I don't know. I don't know too much about it.
And the Military Street Baptist Church, sitting on Monument Park. And looking back up to the Briggs home.
The old fire of 1890 started down in the part of town next to where I guess is now called the Lovely Building, but it was called the Dunn Building one time, but originally the Buzzell Building. It's 4 stories high. It's only 4-story building down. The fire started below there in the old Nicholson place, and came across and came on up through and burned up this street here and burned a lot of homes. And I would guess probably that church was built sometime after the fire, because the fire swept this street
Now this was in addition to the next fire in 1902 that swept through?
Yes, yeah.
So there was an 1890 fire as well?
Oh yeah, the fire of 1890 was much worse, I guess, probably, I don't know, than the one on 1902. Because that burned the park, see, it burned the park here and up through here. Dr. Bates.
Okay, we're at 4 Winter Street, and as you can see, we've given up walking. We've hopped in John's car, and at 3 Winter Street was the old Dr. Burr home, you say, John?
Burr home. The next home was the guy that sold the furnaces and things, which is now Aubrey Grant, president of Home Savings, but was the old Grant house. And this was Frank Shea's on this side of the road.
Okay, we're at 6 Winter Street.
Which ran a grocery store down where McPartland's is now. Then the next house was Merle C. Rideout House. And I'm not sure what he did, but we'll go up on Court Street and see something.
Okay, how about this? I remember this being the old Nickerson house.
Nickerson House, yeah.
Beautiful old house.
Yes, it is. That's Dana Nickerson. That house is an old house right there.
Which house would that be? Your house?
Yes.
26 Pleasant Street.
Yeah. That house was built, oh, I don't know. I've lived there 50 years and somebody had to build it before me. O.N. Smith built it before me. And it belonged to Catherine Wingate, who I bought it from. That, of course, was Harry Bass's home. And this house here was built out of a barn from over here. The barn was moved here and moved there.
I remember that as being the Homer Flint house at one time.
Yeah, Homer Flint house. He was carrying the post office. This is Dr. Wilson's home, the original T.V. Doherty home here. Thomas Doherty was an attorney again, an outstanding attorney in the town.
Now, over on the other side at 7 Charles, I remember that as the Baldy Inman House.
Before that was the Gilpatrick, Gilpatrick. Bob and George and Pam. And they were originally the people who developed the clothespin factory over in Stacyville, the Gilpatricks. This was a Scott Brown home, which was an outstanding attorney in town, which he did a little bit of everything, I guess.
8 Charles Street.
Yeah.
And I remember the old Dr. Evatt House.
Dr. Evatt
here
House.
Here at 10 Charles.
Yeah, that's Dr. Evatt House.
And later the Harry Balch House.
She was this was Claire Brown's home, the librarian. And that's where the chimney goes up, takes a slant curve, and goes on up the roof. But that, as you said, was Dr. Evatt's home. And that was an attorney's house, John Rogers.
11 Charles Street, now Jerry McCarthy's. And Drew Palopoulos, currently, tell us all about this old red brick house here, John.
That was originally, the bricks came from up on the B Road, just inside where you see that big pond. And that was Doherty, James Doherty's home. And that's a beautiful, beautiful woodwork in the inside of that house. Just beautiful work in the inside. And of course it's been redesigned, and some of the upper parts of the roof, where the roof would come down, has to be repointed and stuff, and the bricks are...
How about the next one? J. Fred Donald's house.
J. Fred Donald's home, and that belonged to his father. That's an old home, and I can't tell you an awful lot about the home, but that next home, oh, sugar, that's Tony DeLuca's now.
Yep.
And that belonged to
16 Charles Street.
An elderly gentleman, and I can't remember the name of that guy. Maybe I will later on. All these homes were built, little homes, for built in here. That was Pete Logan's home. No, that's Pete Logan's home.
Right, the next one coming up was Pete Logie's,
And then that
21.
that was Dick Niles's wife's mother's home, or Dick Niles's wife's home, Russell. And that was the old Byther house. I can't tell you too much about that. And I believe in this home here, I think the lady still lives, doesn't she?
Mrs. Hawkins?
Yeah.
Yes, Christine Hawkins.
Yeah.
27 Charles.
Yeah. Now these I don't know much about. Mert, he's built onto that and onto that and onto that. The only living World War I gentleman lived in there, which is Larry
Ross's father-in-law,
yes.
Benjamin Murphy.
Benjamin Murphy. Yeah.
30 Charles Street.
And that was an insurance man. That was Golding's that run the pool.
35 Charles.
Now, I don't think there's anything of any importance up farther.
At the intersection of Elm and Charles. And heading south on Elm Street.
This was a great big house here.
16 Elm Street.
It's a great big old Archibald. Judge Archibald lived there with his little boy, his sister, Lita, and his sister Mary. All lived in that big house. This, I think, is important. That house is Roy Hayes' home. And he married a lady by the name of Orchard, who Orchard Street is the shortest street in town. You know where Orchard Street is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, she was an Orchard and married Roy Byther, lived down there. This is an old home that Titcomb.
Canal.
And he just sold that home.
Was,
With Dean.
yeah.
That home there.
11
Sugar.
Elm.
What was that? Lee, I can't think of it right now. This was the L.R. Ingham home. That is legendary.
Machine shop.
Machine shop and garage downtown. This next home is the Churchill home. That's great, sitting right in the road. He's not going to move either. He don't want to move. And that's the Churchill home. And that home and the house in the front was all the same property. And then there's a home down in back, which was a barn that was converted and made into 2 apartments. And Mrs. Churchill owned both the theaters in town. Then her daughter bought the old Goodrich. That great big home is the Goodrich home.
That.
This big one here.
34 Pleasant.
Yeah, and then over French owned it for a while. But there was a relative between the French and the Goodriches. That was Clarence. Can you get that? I don't know what you
Clarence Lee's.
Clarence Lee's.
Mm-hmm. Now Billy Putnam's.
Yeah, no, Billy Putnam.
Four
Clarence
Elm
Lee
Street.
was a bookkeeper at the Fogs. And I think that home,
Elm Street.
huh? I think that home is very interesting. That isn't the original home. The home that was there burned and it belonged to Jason Hassel, who owned the starch factory down by the riverbank, the Cary River, and also Watson hardware store. And that was a nice, great big home. The back, the Bamfords lived in there once upon a time. I used to tend to a stamp club during the day there. And I'll take you down and show you the barn, which is now a home. But originally the barn, oh sugar, there's homes down there too.
Yeah, you want to talk about Dr. Sussman's and the old Ben house there?
Dr. Sussman's old home is originally the Barnes home, one of the Barnes family. And the next home was Joe Gorham's home. And the Gorhams were bankers and real estate agents. And then Oscar Ben.
Then Oscar Ben. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go down and turn these down. I want you. That was a beautiful home to me. And this was the barn that went with it. Right here. See, that was originally a barn. Claude
Carlisle
Steele lived there. Bob Kinnan lives there now. And gee whiz.
What about the old C.H. Perry house
Yeah,
here?
that's just what I was going to say.
Yeah, we can't miss that one. That in its time was a beautiful house with
Oh, it was a
beautiful woodworking.
I think one of the prettiest things, I think that doorway right there, the door on that house is the prettiest
Yeah, and you step inside to the most beautiful woodworking
Yeah.
in the entryway and then into the hallway. The stairwell going up.
my great-grandfather, my great-uncle.
Yeah, a beautiful old home in need of a lot of attention.
Well, you know what owns it now? The attorney, Vancouver. Oh, what's his name? You know, he defends everybody. Oh, sugar.
To the corner of Pleasant, Elm, and Summer, 34 Pleasant Street, you said was the Fred Sheen home?
Fred Sheen. Yep.
Now multiple apartments.
The next one was Tom McGillicuddy's home.
T.H. McGillicuddy, Coleman Coke.
Yeah. Yes, I know.
I remember that one.
I think this next home on the right is important. That's Cora Puckham's home. And that's called the Moorings. Richard Broder is an attorney, lives there now. And that, to me, is a very important house. Because I think the town history of Houlton was written there.
We're heading west on Franklin Avenue by Commonwealth, and you've said this is Keswick County, USA.
Yeah.
Why is it Keswick County, USA?
Because most of all these people came from Keswick County or Canada.
Off the Keswick
Off
Ridge, just
off the
upriver
Keswick
from
Ridge, yeah.
Fredericton. And the old store here on the corner, the old High Street Grocery.
That's the oldest grocery store in the town. Oldest continuous store in the town of Houlton.
In the same location.
Same location. Yep, the same location.
Turning north on High Street from Franklin Avenue. Now this you said was the Hollywood house that matches the Bob Glidden house over on 121 Main.
Yep.
67 High Street, Wilder Carr's house.
Yep.
And the Carrs were the original founders of High Street Grocery?
High Street Grocers, yes. Now, this used to be Anderson's store here.
Mm-hmm.
That was in market too. And I'm gonna, this house here, we're gonna make a trip here.
West on Weeks Avenue.
This house right here, see that house? That was built by J.M. Van Tassel.
J.M. Van, the concrete man.
Concrete man, yeah. Now we'll go, you can turn that off.
How about the old house down here at 15 Weeks Avenue that Mrs. White had?
I don't know. Mrs. White was the first one I know. And Lee at one time, I think the CPR Railroad was supposed to come through here. And John, who lives in there now? John. He's a history buff too.
John Folsom.
John Folsom, yeah. And that, at one time, it was my understanding, the CPR Railroad was going to go through here and meet the Bean Railroad. Now, I don't know. But that barn was full of stuff. Gee whiz, I went in there one time, right full of all kinds of stuff. And these are all new homes down in here. This is, see this great big house here with Nancy Snyder? Bob
Right.
Snyder lives in, there was a teacher at Ricker.
Mm-hmm.
That's the old Libby, L-I-B-B-Y, Clarence Libby's house. And that's the old barn, and he used to carry all the mail from the railroad station to the post office at one time. Libby. Clarence Libby. And this was Hallett McKean's. That was a Hallett house right there, and a McKean house. And now the daughter is married to Fitzpatrick. The Fitzpatricks is over on, I forget what street they're on now.
Now, right straight ahead of us was the
That's the
original
old-
Leland Ludwig house.
Yes. I don't think Grandpa Ludwig's name was Leland, but...
Yeah, Leland, and then Leland Jr. at 80 Court Street.
Okay.
And I think that was the original Leland Ludwig house.
That was the original Ludwig house. And this is the original Nathaniel Tompkins house, which owned Barbara Pierce has now.
Yep, 78 Court, and the original Ludwig house being 77 Court.
Yeah. And that was Mrs. Saunders. And I believe she either down in the Moral Castle ship. I'm not sure which.
75 Court.
Yeah. And I used to steal apples up back there. That house I can't tell you about. Dr. Johnson used to live there.
Yeah, I remember that as being the Gordon Johnson house.
Yeah.
Jerry York now.
And that was a funeral parlor.
Buzzles, right? Where Bill Hyde lives now. 74 Court.
And then that was an attorney's house. The town was full of attorneys. That's the Spurgeon Lewis house. Lawless, you know, Spurgeon, oh, what the heck was his name? Lewin, L-E-W-I-N, Lewin. This was a big A.E. Moore's home. It was a great big duplex at one time. The Thompson family, Thompson Oil, lived there. The man that lived in this side downstairs was a railroad man. I forget the name now. And then there were apartments upstairs. That's Dr. Palmer's home, right there. You've probably read stories about the sharks. That's the old Henry Shark. And this is Richard Roeder's grandfather's home. Great-grandfather's home. The Roeders.
67 Court. We're at Court and Green. Now that was the Fred Greaves house, I remember in my time.
Yeah,
at 65.
But now, some people just bought that house. But before Fred Greaves, what's his name? You see the way see that little part in the front? See the house that goes through that way? That's the original house, right through there.
Yeah.
Then they built this front part on, and then they built the back part on. And that was originally not Porter, but this is the old Porter home here.
64 Court.
You want to do this house first?
Okay.
This house here?
This house here, Dana Worthley's now.
Yeah, that was my grandfather's house.
And who was your grandfather?
John A. Miller.
John A. Millar.
And we had a barn down there. We used to keep the horses down there when he delivered groceries and stuff like food. Oh, sugar. That guy laid out all the sewer lines and everything at home. what the heck was his name? He laid out all the sewer lines and everything. I meant to remember that, so I'll tell you. And I got a lady coming over from Oakfield to meet those people. But, this, I said, was the school teacher, Porter. And he married a Porter, one of the girls that lived up there. The first house I remember there, ever being there, Cummings. But that wasn't the reason. This home, I can't tell you a thing about it all. I don't know anything about this house. And I do know that that's wrong. The date on the 1830, that's all wrong. This home here was the Richards girls. They were old maids, and that was their big home there.
At 61 Court. 61 and a half was Frances Richards, and her sister Isabel S.
Yes.
was back in 63.
Yes.
The one that has the 1830 on the chimney.
Yes. And this is the old George W. Richards home here. That.
He had the dry goods store down in the square.
Down in the square. Yeah. Vic Thompson built this.
It's a relatively new house.
Yeah. That was Mattie Moore's. That used to be a duplex house. 59. People lived on that side, people lived on this side.
Mary Campbell was on the left side down when her kids were growing up.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Well, on the right-hand side was Mattie Moore's, and she was a dressmaker and used to make a lot of clothes and dress a lot of people and stuff. This was Ransford Shaw.
I don't know.
I think there is. That's Sugar. I can't remember the name. Sugar. He was a teacher at Ricker. She gave Mars Hill Mountain, gave this end of the Mars Hill Mountain to the ski area. That's the George Hall house. George Hall came to the post office one day. You got the camera turned on?
I got it turned on. I better turn it off.
Turned off.
Came up the house at 55 Court Street, which you said was an Oxnard.
Oxnard. And
Who taught at Ricker?
Yeah, he taught at Ricker, and she owned and gave to Mars Hill this end of the ski area. Gave it all to the ski area.
Now, how long has the tennis court been down in the backyard of this house? That's a relatively recent addition.
Yeah, it's not that old.
It's the only house in town, right near the downtown I know, that has a tennis court in the backyard.
Well, and of course, where the Key Bank, where Citizen Bank is now, was the first courthouse. It was the first tennis court built in town. That's the old George Hall house, which is now the town here.
Alan Beans, 54 Court Street.
This, then there was a house here that burned, Estabrook's. That guy owned White's Drugstore.
Right.
Bill Springer.
Bill Springer, yes.
Bill Springer.
49 Court Street, now Bruce Frames and Studio Arts Photography.
Yeah. Now you shut it off a second.
Shut it off or swing up to Gary Hagen's here.
Well, that's what
Or what I think of as the Frank Topman house that you can't really see from Court Street because of the cedar hedge.
That's O'Donnell's.
That was the O'Donnell or Donnell house?
O'Donnell.
You're sure now? It wasn't the Donnell house.
Donnell.
Pull ahead a little more, John, so we can
Well,
get
I wanted to see that garden. See that garden out back now?
Yeah, the flower
That
garden.
was heated underneath. And those flowers would come early, before anything else in town.
Well, how did they heat it?
Had heating underneath the ground.
There's a good shot in front of the house. And I remember this as being the Frank Topman house.
Yeah.
And it ran down, for a number of years, and then Gary and Margaret Hagan brought it back to the beautiful house that it is again.
And this was a beautiful barn here. This was a real nice barn. They kept horses
And it still is a beautiful barn.
Well, he's fixed it up. Gary fixed it up.
Yeah, brought it back. Back around onto School Street, the R. Lafayette Irving House, in my time.
Yeah.
Can you go back beyond that?
Yeah, that was Percy Rideout's house. And Rideouts were the people, she was a Rideout.
Late's wife, Lydia, was Lydia Rideout.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the guy who was in there, the Dudleys used to live over there. D-U-D-L-E-Y. Mildred Dudley and Leighton Dudley and that bunch. This home here,
70 School Street.
yeah, do you know who that is?
That's Donald Dunn's now.
Yeah, but that was where the book of the Thibodeaus, William J. Thibodeau.
Oh, the history of the Irishmen in Houlton.
That's right. That's where he lived. And that was always the Thibodeau home.
Now I'm going to swing around to Philip Manser Howe's house here.
Yeah, and that was the old McCluskey.
Which McCluskey would that be?
The coal and oil.
Charlie McCluskey. Probably one of the most impressive fronts of a house in Houlton. Very impressive. And what I think of is the old Mel Jackins house at 6 Park Street.
That was originally, that's Dr. Ward's home right there, so there.
And in later years, the Dr. Carton home.
Yeah.
And now the Park Street Group home of the Community Living Association.
And that had a 6-hole golf course all the way around it. That was an early golf course. All the back end, go down the back end, come down the side, play up here. Richard Ward and Frank Ward lived there, who was the sons of the Ward family. And they were relatives of the Dunns. But I'm going to go one farther.
Mm-hmm.
That house there is a pasture. A pasture. All the way to Watson Avenue. This home was the home of the McCready's. This was the McCready home. And all the way in back of that was a pasture. And they used to keep cows and deliver milk. I'm getting away from what I meant to be. Up here, I wanted to show you up here. Gosh darn it.
Going east on Park Street, away from Court.
This house here, Pam DeWitt.
Steve and Pam, 19 Park.
That's the old Cates home. Cates' Motor Mart. He was the first person to repair cars and fix cars.
Down on Mechanic Street?
Mechanic, right. The great big house, the big building there. The post office used to keep their trucks and stuff.
5 Mechanic Street.
That's where I was born, right in that upstairs window.
You were born in that upstairs window?
And my father bought that house one time for $1,100.
Mm-hmm. 21 Park Street, Kent and Sherry Goods house now.
And he sold it for $1,400.
Made a profit.
Yes.
Now, heading up Fair Street, because this is where the original racetrack and the fair used to be,
Yep.
off to our left,
Off to the left.
up on the high level ground.
And that was Bill Curry's house. The first guy to sell up on
Letter B Township,
Letter B Township. Yeah.
up on B, as we more
on
commonly
B,
say.
This was the old Fair Street School.
Now the Congregational Church.
Yeah. Gee whiz, I'm getting all messed up here. Jack Burlock's people used to, you know, head of the, what's he, president of the Citizens Bank? He used to live there.
At 14 Fair?
Yeah, and Alvin Hatfield used to live in the next house. I don't remember. And this was...
West on Watson, back toward Court.
It's this was John R. Palmer's home here. Used to be a beautiful front porch on that house. John R. Palmer. And he had what they later called the milk bar with a nice clean top. Right next to Cary Jewelry store. Oh, that guy's got all the, what's his name? Next to Gary Severson.
Chinatown Coin?
Chinatown Coin, yes. Yeah, that's where, right next to there, is where John Palmer was placed. This house was built there, and built by, people have the Dow family. He lives up on
Bruce
there.
Collins.
Yeah, Bruce Collins. That house was never there. There was a pasture, all pasture stuff. That is one of the Dunn's homes there. That is an old home.
And is again, Julie Dunn Brown now.
Yeah. And this was the BS, that was, hey!
What are you doing?
Just riding around.
You taking pictures?
Yes. What are you
Good.
doing?
I just got them all trimmed up.
Oh, did you get the hedge all trimmed?
Yeah.
Now, I remember that as being the Alfie greenhouse.
Yeah.
That's the Alpha Greenhouse.
But before it belonged to Judge
Judge?
Ruggles.
The judge built it, right?
Yes. And I
That's
used
what
to-
Bernard told me.
Yeah, and we used to have, used to play down cellar in it, and had a theater set up down cellar.
He what?
Had a theater set up down cellar. Ruggles, I think.
Really?
Yep.
Had a theater.
Yeah, down in that corner down there.
Wow.
Hey, and you were saying that.
That, on the left-hand side, was the principal, Mr. Perkins, was the principal of the old high school. And he used to run out back the carnival, and he used to have a winter carnival there. Then this house, the next house,
Was that Joe Robinson's mother? Or she was across the street.
she was across,
She was across the street.
That was,
Oh, who was the old gal who used to live in there? Joe's mother was in, right,
Yeah.
5 Watson Avenue.
yeah.
On this side, this one right now is Richard Kennard, living there now, and I can't think of the old name.
Then that was the principal of Fair Street School, which is Mrs. Nelson. And A.E. Moore is the big potato man. He used to own this as a duplex. See, there's a duplex. That, on the right-hand side, goes upstairs. This goes
Right,
right
Anna
in there.
Scholes, the retired town
Oh, that
manager
one.
of Littleton.
And that's where I lived right after I was born. See, because I lived over there for a while, and I used to run across the street while they were building this house, and that's it. They used to ski and slide all around here. That's a nice house. And that was built about 1923, 1920, something like that.
And coming back up onto Court Street.
Now we're going down and start up again.
Take a little look at Mildred and Kay's flowers here as we go. And on this corner, before the post office was built in 1933 to 35,
Was a Nevers.
was a Nevers house.
Great big house.
I have a picture in the vault that shows the rubble of them having torn that down before they started construction on this site.
Well, in the Nevers house is there. Dr. Ellis's house, Annis, Dr. Annis, A-N-N-I-S. I've got the front door of that house. It was here. Then the next house, not to the Roder house, but the next house was the P.S. Berry house. It was a great big house, too. So there are 3 homes torn down here to make the post office.
And one of those houses my great-great-grandparents lived in. Fred and Maggie Cole, and had 14 kids.
That's the site of the old Northern Hotel,
Right?
or the Freeman House. The Freedman House. There was originally a nice home there, a nice beautiful home. When they built the Northern Hotel, they moved the house back on this side, the background. And then the people that ran the hotel lived in that place. Now,
Yeah, they tore that house down late 70s.
yeah, and they never should have torn that, I say. They had to put a bulldozer on the 3rd floor to tear that hotel down.
To tear the hotel down, right? Yeah, later. Now, how about Dr. Ellis's house and...
Well, I don't know, but Dr. Osborne, Jimmy Osborne lived there for years. And this was Dr. Gibson's home. And then the old Clark Hotel, Clark House, was there. L.D. Clark had the place. There was where the parking lot is torn down. Gee whiz,
Court Street at the intersection of Court and Weeks. We've talked about the Ludwig home at 77.
that was the Nathaniel Tompkins.
The Nathaniel Tompkins home at 78, and the Lee Ludwig's Jr. home at
And that
80
home,
Court Street.
That home was the old home that was down where the telephone company is now and moved up here. You know where the telephone company is, right across from the post office?
Right.
That home was originally set there, and that belonged to Peggy Mitchell. And that was the first place I ever saw a knife go into the kitchen, go all the way into the dining room, and all the way through to the living room.
How about the Dr. Perkins house at 79
That
Court?
was Britton's home. And he was the head of the Farmers National Bank. Jack Britton. These next houses I can't tell you much about. Sidney Cosby lived in this house once upon a time, but I can't tell you much about it. Across the street, where that vacant lot is, was the old Berry house.
Mm-hmm.
And he was P.S. Berry. And that was the Chamberlain House, where Jim McPartland lives now. The Chamberlain lived there. And he was the gentleman who used to had an employment office and used to hire people for the woods and hire people for the here and there. And it was kind of what you might call a loan shark, I don't know. That right there is the Burpee House. He was an engineer, a layout engineer, not an engineer. He was an engineer in the B&A Railroad, but not an engineer driving an engine. He laid out the railroad. He also laid out the railroad in Michigan.
Now, you want to do the Cleveland house here?
And all from here, all up back here, all of it, was all an open field. He was the largest producer of potatoes in the world. E.L. Cleveland.
Now, the Cleveland Road is named for him,
I don't know. I don't know.
and Lee Cleveland across the street
Across the street.
would have been his...
Probably his son or grandson, I'm not sure. But that great big house over there was the Kelso House. Kelso.
16 Columbia.
Yeah, which was he had something to do with the courts. This guy that lived in there now, Brown, I think the name.
Dana Brown's house. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but now what was the name before that?
Colbat. Agnes Colbat.
Colbat. He's the guy that's got the liquor down where? Down on the coast of Maine that sells the liquor. Oh, makes the wine, makes up wine.
Beautiful flowers, including that piece of flock particularly like.
That's B.H. Brown over there. Let's go over there.
Yeah, we're going to cut off the end of Court Street here. You want to...
I don't know why it stays open.
That was the Leigh Cleveland house and been vacant for a number of years.
But the son, Edward, is a doctor.
Uh-huh.
And he just doesn't want to seem to sell it.
Yeah, I can remember on the snowiest day in the wintertime, either Lee or B would be out there sweeping that walk right bare before we get out there to deliver mail. There'd be younger people, snow be all piled up, and they always had theirs swept right bare.
Right there.
Yep.
This is the first post office.
The Amos Purse House.
Yep. And across the street from it is the old A.L. Robinson house. This house here. We'll come back to that house. I'll come back to the post office in a minute.
Okay.
That house, Dick Niles, retired postmaster. See the way the roof is?
Mm-hmm.
That's a split of snowflake. That's what they always said. Henry Boober built that house. It's 100, isn't that 100 Court Street?
100 Court Street, yep.
And see how peaked the roof are?
He didn't plan on shoveling the roof.
No, he didn't plan on shoveling the roof. And his son, young Boober, has done an awful lot in slides and things. This was the old, where these two homes here was the old Brooke House. It was a great big tenement house, land along there, and it always flooded out. That walk dropped right off, and it always flooded out every year. And I don't know, there's 4 or 5 families living there. That right there is Mrs. Tompkins, the geography teacher at the old school. And she was a tough teacher.
105 Court.
The next place is Bear. It's the Bear place. I'm not sure how they spell the name now. But Romanelli lives there now. And there, B-A-E-A-E-I. And he was a Philippine people on the Philippine Bert, I can't tell you much about Bert. Across the street, I think it's interesting because both those houses belong to Olin Rideout. And this one here, where Joe Skean lives now, the early years, Minor Road, the early years, there was a lot of the houses that are built of cement blocks, so big. Those cement blocks were all made out back of there. There was a big barn out back there, and that's where they used to make them and fire them and so forth. Now we're going to travel down. This is the old Court Street. I don't know anything about these houses, but I want to show you a house out here. Had an awful time here. Let's say that house in here. Ready to get right there?
Yep, Virginia Ludwig's house.
That's Claire Brown's house. That was originally Claire Brown, B-R-O-W-N-E. And can we see it? Go there.
Yep.
Do you want to drive up in and get a better picture of it or not?
Well,
it's the old Hughes place. He bought 4 brand new Austins. She, the young girl that lived there, I'm going to turn in the driveway. The young girl that lived there, Helen Hughes, became the Lane Cedar Company. You know Lane Cedars stuff?
Right, plain cedar chest now.
Yeah, the cedar chest. And she became the Lane Furniture.
And now it's Dave and Mary Harbison's house.
And Dave's done a nice job of keeping it up and taking care of it. Dave works awful hard.
Out there mowing the lawn right now. Go, Dave, go.
There used to be a garage set over here. Great big garage. And they used to crawl in under here in our tummy when we were allowed to. You'd catch all kinds of trout in here.
Out of Brown Brook.
Out of Brown Brook. And Dow's. This was Dow's garage here. D-O-W.
298 Court Street, Houlton's first post office in 1826, the Amos Purse home, from which Amos fell off the front of the house in 1826 and died.
I don't think Joe will mind us going up through there.
Dr. Joe Beasley lives there now, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind at all, us pulling right through.
Some of the, see this 9/9? Well, generally there is. See in the windows? Generally the windows, those are old windows there, are 9/9. Which you don't find too many windows in the town of Houlton. That they're that many. But Joe's changed all the windows. He didn't change the size of them, he just changed, put in, and they still keep the 9/9.
7 Court Street, the A.L. Robinson House.
Oh,
We're gonna swing east on Franklin Avenue.
remember we were up to J.M. Van Tassel's house a little while ago?
Right.
Just made it to cement block, type of blocks. Well, here's the Ralph Black house is built. See the house right here ahead?
At 7 Franklin Avenue?
That's the same blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Eddie Moore's home on the Ralph Black home. It has the same thing in it as that.
Same blocks. I had never noticed that.
This was Dr. Wilson's home. He was one of the first chiropractors in town. That was a nice home. These are all been rebuilt and built. This was nothing but a great big here down.
And then back up into Keswick County, USA again.
Yes. Yeah, we've been in Keswick all day.
We're right back to Keswick again.
See this guy here, the flags? I wish they'd change those. That's an old home right there, Lee. That's the man, M-A-N-U-E-L. He worked for Forbes.
Okay, Dougie Henderson, yeah, we're at 20 High Street.
That's the Chadwick.
That was the John Chadwick home?
Yes. Yeah. And the grandfather of that gentleman, and McNair, designed this home.
That I think of as the old L.E. McNair house.
Yes, but before that, it was before that.
Brian Swell's house and law office now.
And Brian's done a lot to it. Fixed, has kept it nice, fixed it up nice. It's nice. Woodwork in there is beautiful. Woodwork in that house.
And this is the hallmark of the Chadwick houses, was the beautiful woodwork inside.
Yeah.
Looking straight down High Street at the old Houlton Academy.
Now we're over.
Okay, we're at 2 Burleigh Street.
Yeah.
That's the Robert Ward house, now the Jim Ward house. And this next house at 9 Burleigh
Mr. Newman.
is the Madigan House. Now, the Newbegins were tied in with the Burleys who brought the railroad into Aroostook County.
He was an engineer for the railroad, surveying engineer.
Newbegin was?
Yep.
And across the street also was a Burley house, correct?
This was the Newbegin.
This was Newbegin's. And across Pleasant Street, at 60 Pleasant Street, was the Burley house.
And we can go right in.
We'll swing over in that driveway.
You want to go in around, or you?
Why don't you just swing up Pleasant and come in from that drive? That will leave the house on the right side of the car.
Yeah. This is a nice, beautiful piece of property here, I think.
Other than the Carys, perhaps one of the most influential families in Aroostook County, the Burleys.
Yeah.
They accomplished what no one else could in bringing the railroad through.
1893. And Tom has kept it up well, you know.
The old carriage house.
Yeah. The house is pretty much broken up into a lot of rooms. Yeah, now I'll let you look back at the house here. I don't know about the garage part. I assume that was, it probably was a stable at one time, but this part here is
the old carriage house back on this side. We're up and running. Yeah. Cochran's, a Cochran's drugstore. We're at 54 Pleasant Street.
And now it's where the donut shop is.
And looking across now to the Russell House.
Yeah, George Russell.
40. Yeah, there's one coming, John. 44 Pleasant, and the next one down at 42 Pleasant Street that was Les Rhoda's.
Which was the McLeod house. Clark. He had an office upstairs over the Houlton Savings Bank. L.D. Clark and Frank Clark.
And we're right back down to where we picked up with the moorings.
Moorings, yes.
Earlier in our video. So we'll shut off until we get over on the other side. On to 13 Pleasant.
Hazen Nevers was a clerk in the original First National Bank. Oh, and this is the Mulholland house.
The one at 20 Pleasant? The one that's 4 apartments now?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was a standing house at one time, and before maybe. This is Jerry Linehan's house.
Mm-hmm.
That's an old house.
Yep, Jerry lived to over 100 and
Yes,
died just
that's
within
an
the last
old
couple of
house,
years.
yeah.
How about the next one that Starkey had? That
I
Earl
think
Starkey
that's
had.
always been in the Starkey family. I'm not sure about it, but
The family still comes here in the summertime.
yeah. Then the next house was the Doherty house before they moved up on Elm Street.
Now, if we stopped right here, John, we could do the next two. The Manser House, which is now Bowers Funeral Home,
Yeah.
and Manser's mother, Mary Jane Manser. This house that we're looking at right now at 12 Water Street was the house that sat where the Houlton Trust Company building now is on Market Square, on the corner of Market Square and Water Street.
That's right.
And after Mrs. Manser died in 1901, it was moved down to its current location. And I've also heard rumors that when it was Riley's boarding home back in the 20s, that there was quite a lot of activity in that house too.
Susie Riley ran.
Susie Riley ran a boarding house at least in that home in the 20s. And the Manser House. But the old Manser House at 12 Water Street goes back a long ways.
Did you go to St. Mary's here?
I did, yes. And now a funeral home. Yeah, the old barn was converted into classrooms, and the old house itself was the convent where the nuns lived.
And this was the post office.
This was the old post office
St.
from
Mary's.
1893 to 1935. And this was also used as classroom for St. Mary's, and currently vacant. Now, how about the old McPartland house next to the town office?
Right there.
What do we
That's
know
a
about
no.
that?
Well, I don't know, except I do know, if you look at the rails, the way the railing's built, that's the same as on my house. So I'm going to guess that they were both built prior to 1850. That great big barn over there is an old building too. And we went by the nice Frank Shea house that had where James McPartland is now. That was the grocery store, Frank Shea. And then next door was where the first cars were repaired, the Cates's, and we went by their house today, the Cates house. Donald
Okay.
I know Kathy O'Leary.
It was a Kearney house back when I was in school. Yeah.
Kearney, you got the name.
Kearney, K-E-A-R-N-E-Y. Yeah. Beautiful old house, 8 Holland Avenue.
And David's got a lot to it.
Yeah,
And
looks
see,
nice.
they cut the trees all out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see.
Yeah.
See, it was, you couldn't see downtown at all. And somehow they cleaned the whole
Yeah. I got quite a view looking back down across
These,
the Holland Avenue Bridge.
these apartments are awful small, but it's nice. You can look across. Nice to downtown.
This is a field where we used to slide down the riverbank.
Yes.
Much to Mother's chagrin back in my younger days.
Yes.
Now the bushes and trees are all grown up too much. You can't slide down,
But you can see nice in the winter. You can see the town.
right. But you're right. The trees have grown to the point that you can't see back downtown up on the highlands here.
Now that's a former town manager's house, but I forget who owned it.
Lou
before.
Bones, Riley's had it for a while.
Yeah, but I don't remember before then either. On this big house, that's the old Leif Irvin house. Or,
The white one?
yeah, right there.
Mm-hmm. 12
Old
Holland Avenue.
Irvin house, and they had the men's clothing store downtown, Rupert Irvin. And Dr. Hogan lived here one time, and Petty Hogan lived here one time, worked for the post office. But I forget what their name. This is the old Raleigh Market house, Raleigh's Market. Now you can leave that on or you can turn it off. But this is the old Archibald, Porter Archibald from Monsalvo.
Mm-hmm.
And at one time, there was a bunch of guys that were bringing beef across up in Monsalvo against the law.
No, they didn't do that, did they?
That was part of it. That's Stover, who was the first cigar salesman in town of Houlton. He used to have the cigar, not the first, but he used to have the cigar store in Houlton. S-T-O-V-E-R.
Mm-hmm.
Stover. I don't know whose place that was there. Of course, I think they'd throw it out a little bit. Hey, where is it? That was Lawrence Roach, who was a tax collector, tax assessor here. And that was the old Jim Pearson. I forget who that house was. This, oh, sugar, what was the name of the people that owned that house? that off?
I got it on, yeah.
Oh, you got it on?
Yeah,
Well,
and that's James C. Madigan IV.
yeah, and that was Dwight Webb's home, turned out. You got that? See this home here? That
Which
was
one, the white one?
This white one, yeah.
Yeah.
That was a beautiful home. They were the first, they sold pianos and things downtown. They were real early. That was a beautiful home at one time.
And I remember this as being the Kate Wallace house right here.
That's right. That's the old Wallace house. You see, at one time they were going to put the road, Nathan Solomon lived there. They were going to put the road through there and build houses out there. And
Going east on Washburn.
they were going to put houses.
We're down to 20 Lincoln Street, the intersection of Washburn and Lincoln, and that was the house that Dr. Johnson was born in.
Yep.
Dr. Gordon Johnson.
Dr. Gordon Johnson. And that was Anna Little's house.
Okay, back across the street at, what would that be, 16 Washburn,
16,
right?
yeah.
The little house, and then Gus Porter at
Gus
18.
Porter's there, yeah. I don't know much about
And south on Lincoln Street.
these all, I can't tell you much about these houses. Gerald Jackson lives there. That was a B&A railroad right there. That was a nice. That's Lester Baker. That house right there is a Houlton Savings Bank president. Oh, my wife and I were first married, lived there. Their parents' house. These towns are all quite old.
Mm-hmm.
I know who lived in them, but not. Cummings lived there. Stanzas lived there. Shirley Reardon, in the Key Bank now, lives in this house.
The white one around the corner, yep.
Yeah.
The one with the flag on the front porch there. Yeah.
You got anything to eat up there?
Old John Lowry house where Andy Moores lives now. 69 North. And the old Fred Putnam house, which is now First Citizens Bank.
And the First Citizens Bank has kept this part of the house. See this part here, the front part?
Right.
They have kept that the way it was. They have not moved the windows. They have not destroyed the doors. They kept that. Jack Burpee. But they kept that in its natural state.
This is the Aaron Putnam house at 121 North Street, looking back over the potato field, sloping back down to the river, as they have for the last couple of hundred years.
Then
Looking back down to, go just a little farther, John. Now you say this, yeah, that's the Arthur Putnam house at 101 North, and we're in the driveway of the Aaron Putnam house
live in Millar Leigh, living here.
at 121 North. Okay, you say that's 59 North Street, and you say that's one of the oldest houses in Houlton.
Yes. Frank Topman's brother, Victor, lived there at one time. But my great aunt ran a boarding house there. And that's probably one of the oldest houses in the town of Houlton right there.
Park Putnam Tavern, built in 1812.
1812?
I believe so.
Okay.
110 North Street was also a Putnam house.
That was an old log cabin.
We're at 159 Military Street. We believe this to be one of the original Houlton houses. Possibly the one in the 1850 census that was S. Willard Houlton's, in which case in the 1850 census there were 29 people.
That's just the top of Catardon in there.
Yeah, you can just barely see it right straight ahead. We're at the intersection of the Garrison Road and the Military Road, US Route 2, heading up into where Hancock's barracks was.
See, now, Joseph Houlton, I believe, built more down in the field, down where Bruce's place is, you know, Bruce Collette. And they came up onto the Garrison there. I don't think they used this road.
But the road was farther off toward the west, and
Yes. I
Came
think
up
the
down
road
through
was down
there.
come up, and then come up onto the Garrison. See, this was a big garden when Ab used to have Ab Manuel.
awfully hazy this evening. Can't really see well out across. Nothing much to see up in the old Garrison now.
The reservoir.
Looking back to Reservoir Hill.
Yeah. But you see, all this was grown all up, so it was down quite a bit, but it's all grown up. See those two mountains over there? Now, see this is either that, down here farther. Yeah. Now you want to take over here?
We want to take a shot. How about this Bell House?
I don't know much.
Don't know much about that one. You can't quite get down to the old Cary House. I think there were two Cary houses at one time, and one must have stood up here farther, and the second one is Jean Bell's place down to 165A Military Street. If you can get ahead another driveway
you're calling
there.
that down there? Okay.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, Jean Bell used to live there,
Right.
and he married a Drake. Now that's a right of way there.
That's the right of way that goes up through to the fort.
To the fort.
To the barracks.
You cannot build anything in there.
And you think that's where the old road went in?
Yep.
Right, just on the east side of 182 Military Street. Now this house right here, in Cora Putnam's book, The History of Houlton, she has that as being the Houlton house, and the next one down at 159 as being the Cary House, and we think that's probably incorrect. That this probably was the Cary House uphill from the Houlton house, which we discussed earlier as being the boarding house with a total of 29 people in it in that 1850 census, which is kind of hard to imagine that many people in a house that size. But
of course, there was two chimneys.
and there's two chimneys. That's built in a similar style to the Black Hawk Putnam Tavern, but it has one less floor. Rather than being 3.5 story like the Black Hawk, this one is only 2.5 story. But I think that's probably the Willard Houlton house, or what was the Willard Houlton house in the 1850 census, and that's one of the oldest houses in town.
Yes, definitely old house. Must have doing a lot of work on that house, right?
And then that house down on the corner here, it's the one that Dick Curlin says has all the fancy archways built down into the foundation.
Where?
And he's got it labeled 1822 now, and I don't know where Dick came up with that date.
That's David Adams' grandfather's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was not Lyman Wood, but Wood.
In the Rowan Colby Atlas of 1877, it refers to that as being the Ingram House. So that house is well over 100 years old.
Yes.
I don't know where he came up with the 1822 date. down into Paddy Hollow. Everybody's got a story about how Paddy Hollow got its name.
Right here
Right here.
was the original Bell store.
Okay, right on the intersection of Foxcroft Road and the Military.
Before they built over there.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a filling station. Dave Bell's father and Frank Bell's father ran it. And then the kids, when they were, David and Frank, when they were little, they helped run it. Now Frank's son is running that place. And you can buy anything in there, Lee.
Just about, yeah.
I don't care.
It's the old general store.
Yeah.
If you need paint or a nail or a screw or...
If you need a fan belt or some kind of a belt, boys, you go down cellar sometime and there's belts down cellar galore.
Yep.
That was McPherson's Market. These were all grocery stores.
Yep.
Near that home.
Courier's Fred Dosher had a meat market here
Yeah.
where the parking lot is now. I remember that one.
Yeah.
Now you say the original fire station for
Was that-
Houlton was
right there.
where Houlton Farms Dairy has the ice cream bar now.
Approximately, yeah.
Approximately.
Approximately there.
Now I have heard also that at one time this whole area off on the south side of Military Street on Paddy Hollow had a lot of small houses where the Irish originally settled.
Okay.
And those houses have been gone for 100 years or so because it's very wet land and not really good land for building on. So that at one time this whole south side of Military Street over to the CP track was Paddy Hollow. It was a place where lots of Irish lived because the Catholic Church from 1839 on was over on the north side of Military Street. And the original church sat right in front of where the cemetery is now.
This guy is a good history buff in here. I forget what his name is.
Kennedy?
Kennedy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get up through there.
We can go right up there to the old CP rail tracks.
Yeah. And,
That house has been around a year or two also. 101 Military Street. Coming back up onto the CP. You started to mention earlier too about the Canadian Pacific coming only as far as Rustic
here.
Milling on Station Street.
But
And
then they were going to extend it and extend it down. They had talked once of extending it down Week Street to bring it out there to meet the B&A, who was going to come across Franklin Street or Avenue.
Franklin Street, yeah.
And meet up with it.
Yeah, and we're coming right out into right where the old CP Rail Houlton
Yeah.
Station was, right
Was right
where
there,
this
wasn't
Rustic
it?
Milling truck is, yeah.
Yeah.
This is where they tore it down and the track set just this side of the green building. And the tracks have since been torn up. You can drive right back out to Cary Street, right down where the railroad tracks
you
used to
can?
be. Yeah, they took those out this spring.
Oh. And one of the things that's amazing about those tracks is they're the great big heavy tracks. You know, they're not the little thin lightweight trucks. They're, I forget what they call them, 65-pound tracks or whatever. And that's the same as the B&A and the CPR. Those mainline tracks are great big heavy. The web on them is a lot heavier, you know.
Now this little building right here was the old Customs House at one
Yes,
time.
yes.
Right at the intersection of Station Street and Military.
United States Customs House. And then the Canadian Customs was just outside of Woodstock.
On Military Street by Horton Building Supply, 15 Military.
And there was a triangle that set here. And that was the whole triangle from about here down to the corner was the Houlton Foundry. And they made old stoves, they made all kinds of gears. Then that was where you could go with a sample or whatever, and they could make it for you into a steel. All right, there was seven girls worked in there doing nothing but hand dipping chocolates between this and the other building. I'm not sure which building was which. And they hand dipped chocolates. I think it was this building.
Okay, we're on 2 Pierce Street, and that was a John A. Millar
Candy factory.
candy factory.
That was an extension of the factory that, up on Court Street.
Mm-hmm.
And this was where they made all their chocolates. And they hand dipped the chocolates, and they made chocolates for Schwartz and Apollo's and shipped them. And he was the largest merchant this side of Boston. Including Bangor and Portland. Time.
Okay, where Jerry's auto body is now?
Yeah,
Or the yellow house?
that was, no, that house there.
Okay, where Jerry's is, 56 Bangor, was Docher's Ice Cream Factory.
And that's where they lived.
Okay, that'd be Fred Docher's
Grandfather.
grandfather.
That was J.K. McKay's the Chevrolet.
Mm-hmm.
This was the
Eastern Motors. Gerald Holmes.
Well, that
I'm old enough to remember that.
was before Gerald Holmes.
Now, how about the old Peabody house here? James S. Peabody's. It's been around a while.
Yes.
And
so was the place of business.
Right, farm implement, and then the old James S. Peabody building
yeah.
across the street. And what was the big old greenhouse coming up on our right here, where it says
That's the
Beauty
Ingersoll
House?
house.
That's the Ingersoll house.
That's
okay.
the Ingersoll house.
Beautiful old house.
Yeah. That's one of the best houses on this side of town.
Yeah.
I'll pull in this driveway.
Yep, that is a
See the
beautiful old
cupola
house.
up on top of it?
Mm-hmm. On top of the barn. Yeah.
And what those cupolas were for is they were widows, what they were called years ago. All right, this was the old Grange Hall section. This was one of the early filling stations in town. And that was their grist mill, where they did their grinding in the mills and stuff. And this became, you could buy tires and things here at this place. Then,
You say the building that Grossman's was in was a grist mill?
yep, that's where they did all their milling. Then they had their store. I'm going to deviate for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
because I want to go in that road there. Then, that's the Grange Hall.
Right. And the
And
store
right
set to the left of it from
to the left,
where we're
yeah.
looking at.
And that was Young's Market up there, where Ralph Saunders lived.
Uh-huh.
That was the little meat market. And this was a great big grain store. You could go in the grain store and buy a soup, stockings, meat. You could buy most anything you could think up or think of. And this is the old Grange Mill part here. And that's all new.
Back across Bangor Street to the west, away from the Grange,
And the
into Granite Street.
Granite Street.
Now,
And the Aspinwall planter was up in here, and it was manufactured in Houlton. Oh, and I can't remember. Puffer. Puffer was the guy that made them at the last of it. And this building on the left, right there, is where the Aspinwall planter was made. And for years, this was a storage, there were storage buildings here. This was all the Aspinwall. And that was one of the famous things, I guess, of the town of Houlton, maybe, you might call it. Now, we're in the back end of the Buffalo Fertilizer, which is the largest fertilizer company in the world at that time. And that building there was nothing but offices, all offices, upstairs and down. George McGillicuddy worked there one time, Paul McGillicuddy worked there one time. Rand Weber was the head of the whole thing. And this was all the Buffalo Fertilizer. That building, and the next building over was all Buffalo Fertilizer.
down on the
that was the cheese factory that the Ingersolls had, called the Ingersoll Cheese Factory.
We're on the Bangor Road just before
Forest Barnes.
Barnes.
And that Forest Barnes, that house has always been in the Barnes family for years and years and years. That's one of the older houses in town. I'm not sure of the date of it or anything, but Forest Barnes, the guy that wrote Barnes' the book on Barnes,
Francis Barnes.
Francis
Yeah.
Barnes, he had this place. And this is where he lived.
Across the railroad tracks, heading north on the Porter Settlement Road.
Yeah.
Looking down across the field is across to Hagen's.
Yep. That's all Hagen. And Hagen's were, they had a manufacturing plant here. What were they?
Potato harvesters,
harvesters.
yeah.
Yeah, at one time. And that great big barn over there, see that big barn? That's one of the biggest barns around here. And it costs as much to re-roof that barn as it did build the barn when they built it originally. That's Porter Barn and Farm. These are relations to Big Porter. Can't think of that Porter's name.
Now I remember Herman. being here.
Herman, that's it. Herman lived there. And Herman was, he's an awful nice man.
One of the finest, yeah.
One of the finest, yeah. Now, this is where the Houlton Airport was supposed to be, right here. You see why?
Yep, nice flat stretch.
This is where the Houlton Airport was to be. Now, I think as it turned out to be, I think it's better where it is because of the being adjacent to the lines. But this was just a case of who owned this land and who owned the land where the airport was built. All that amounted to. That was Leonard Young's farm down there. I can turn here someplace. Isn't that all solid out there? Must be, isn't it?
You were on the Porter Settlement Road, almost out to the Bangor Road, and the last place on the right before you cross over the Medexnicag River is
Porter Settlement School.
the Porter Settlement School. And looking back on the other side, behind us there was the Gardner place on the right and the Wiggins farm on the left. And you say that was called the Sand Hill Farm?
That's the Sand Hill Farm.
And behind it, going up over the gravel and sand esker.
Yep.
Probably should mention something about that esker starting out in Hodgson, running right through here, running all the way through Houlton, all the way to Littleton.
All the way to Littleton is right up to Glen Manors.
That esker certainly is one of the significant geological features of the town.
And this of course was all gravel pit at one time. It's all since been torn apart. And what did he do? He seeded that?
Yeah, that's,
is that on now?
Yep.
Well, I want to move, hopes to move that Houlton sign in down to here sometime. I'm going to go see John and see if we can't, because these were all, Alan Clark planted all these pines, and that was a good place for the Houlton sign, but it's allowed to grow up so much. Now the road used to go where we are, and then it went in here, which is Morris Cody's farm now, which was originally the McGinley farm.
This was the McGinley farm of Morris's? Or
McGinley farm, and now it's Morris Cody.
Yeah, how about the other house over here on the right with the big barn?
That was a Vincent, and that is Jerome Vincent. I don't know much about that place. But this place was my great-grandfather's place, here.
Now that was William McGinley?
McGinley, yeah. Roger Lincoln lived here for a while. Cecil McGinley lived here for a while. There used to be a great big barn.
Big barn over here.
Over here, and Morris tore it down. Now this is the road. The road used to go right through the yard here, and go out And that's Soldiers Hill up there. If you were to go dig up in that hill, Soldiers Hill, the soldiers that came up through from Bangor used to camp overnight there and then go into Houlton.
Okay.
And this road used to go out and come back out
Right by the Long Farm.
by the Long Farm, which was that was where the stagecoach used to stop at night and put up, and then they'd go into Houlton the next day.
And this is where the mill stream comes down from Hodgson, down over the falls where Cary's had the first mills in Houlton, and you say the first electrical works in Houlton were also powered right here.
The Sand Hill Farm that belonged to Cary.
Cary had another mill down on this flat area next to the river.
I don't know, Lee, I don't know that. But he had that land out there.
Yeah, that the land all the way across the river.
Sand Hill Farm, yes. There is a picture in town around. There's quite a common picture of this particular road. A bunch of gypsies went off in here one time, and 4 or 5 of them were killed in the car. Years and years and years ago. That's sometime in the 30s, maybe. The old road used to go Sincock. Sincock was the people who used to own this land. And they where Jimmy Carr's office is now. This road used to go in around there and follow the river and come out up by Ivy's. And that was all owned by the Sincock.
The old Bass Farm. And looking back down toward the Barnes homestead.
You wanted me to pull up in the yard of the Barnes house?
Oh, I think we can shoot it from right here, John, as we approach it.
Want me to pull in over here to Carl's?
No, I think if we just keep going, we can get a pretty good shot of it right from here. A little better shot than what we got from right up close, up front of it.
And that, of course, was the Ingersoll cheese factory, and across from Barnes' place. Should have slowed down for you.
Nope, that's all right. Over here you said was
A.E. Moore's.
A.E. Moore's.
Yeah. Paul Jackins married
And
B. Moore's.
Yeah, and I've heard that referred to as the French farm.
The French farm, that's what it is, yeah. The French farm. I don't think that it was anything to do with the Frenchies, I don't think. Oh, yeah. You know, up where the state police barracks is now, that was the original poor farm. Up where the state police barracks is.
Right.
There was not, Coles Express had a big terminal here, a real big terminal here. There, the whole county, when they first came to town, Coles Express built a place there, and he was the first person to ever plow the roads in Houlton. Allie Cole was.
To plow up through the Haynesville woods.
Plows up through the Haynesville woods, yeah.
On Green Street, the old Grange Hall.
The Grange Hall was a great big hall here. And that burned on the first day of January, I think.
The store set to the east of the hall.
Yep. Yeah.
Biggest Grange in the world.
That was a store, a young store. You should go there and buy penny candy. And that's the old Longfellow School. That was the first 4 grades. This was all one big building, Grange Home.
Whose house was that?
Dow.
That was a Dow house also?
Henry, I think his name, yeah, Henry Dow. And his daughter lives there now. Jimmy Dow, who Dow Field's named after, James Dow, he was a B-25 Mitchell bomber pilot. He ran in, he clipped the side of the Empire State Building and crashed. And then his brother went into the Air Force and was killed down in Texas.
Lawrence Horton?
Lawrence Horton, yeah.
Did you say it was a Pete Sawyer?
Yep. He was a lumberman. And ran the land for all up north. Ran a lot of that land up north. This is the old Grant, Oscar Grant.
Oscar Grant's now,
But
yeah.
the J.E. Robinson home that had the store downtown where York's bookstore is now. And I think they're the only ones living there. This is Charlie Lunt here.
Which one?
That great big gray one.
14 Green, the
Yeah.
gray one? Mm-hmm.
And his daughter was married to Rick Foster. And he was a big B name. There's a guy putting in there.
Right, Garth down by the stream, yeah.
I don't know how they made it. This is the old Lyman Smith home here. And Isabel O'Donnell lives there now, but that used to be a porter.
Right, Isabel Leishman.
Yeah,
Isabel O'Donnell.
O'Donnell.
Maiden name.
And that was an old beehive. I don't know. Forget who lived there. Mel, young Jackins owns that now. And this is the old B.B. McIntyre home that's being all built all over. As I told you, I guess before.
Back up onto Court Street,
Yep.
where we were a few
And that's
hours
what
ago.
I was trying to think of that name, B.B. McIntyre.
B.B. McIntyre. All I can
Yeah.
think of was the Fred Greaves house.
No, that B.B. McIntyre owned that house originally. And he married a porter from over here.
From over
That